Hi and welcome to this chess video. I am Fidemaster Ingvar Jóhannesson from Iceland, and we are going to review a game from the fourth round of the Tata Steel Masters. Now, Magnus Carlsen, he has the white pieces and he's playing Vladimir Kramnik. Vladimir Kramnik was the 14th world champion, took the crown from Kasparov in 2000, and Magnus Carlsen is the 16th world champion and current world champion, winning the crown in 2013 against Vishy Anand. And heading into this game, Kramnik has been struggling in this tournament. He has already lost against Giri and Nepomniachtchi, so only half a point out of 3. And meanwhile, Magnus has 1.5 point out of 3, 3 draws. And actually, his current draw streak is 5 games at the European Club Cup, 12 games in the World Championship, that's 17, and then 3 here. So 20 games in a row that have ended in a draw. And we're of course talking about classical chess. So can he break the spell in this game? Let's see. He opens up with e4. And we already analyzed Nepomniachtchi against Kramnik, which was also in this opening. Kramnik gets black again. So his third black in 4 games, so really struggling in this tournament. And unlike yesterday when Nepo castled, we have d3 here by Carlsen. Bishop to c5 and c3. Kramnik decides to go for it here with d5. It's not the most common approach, but a very aggressive one, which kind of fits the style of Kramnik recently. He just wants to have fun and get a good game and enjoy chess. He took on e4. Magnus castled. Kramnik castled and Magnus castled as well. And queen e7. Now a logical question is, well, Carlsen played b4, but here and on the next few moves he does have the option of doubling black's pawns, which optically looks bad, but it turns out not to be such a great idea, because black will always be able, let's say you want to really clamp down, maybe play rook b1 and a3 and sort of try and get some kind of clamp on the dark squares. Of course you have to protect this first. Black was always in time to play c5 and then get a good diagonal for the bishop, be it on b7 or a6. And overall, black gets enough dynamic compensation with the bishop pair so that the double pawns are not an issue. And it seems like Magnus doesn't even think about taking. He plays a b4, expands a little bit on the queen side. He plays a3 here to be ready to meet a5 with rook b1 because of the pin here. So unpins with rook to b1. We have takes and bishop to e6. So Kramnik gets his pieces out. Rook to e1, always a useful move, protecting the pawn and also opening up this square for either a knight or a bishop. Rook after d8, going to the open file. Logical moves here. Queen to c2, getting out of the line of fire of the rook. We have h6. Again, long term, making note for the king, also stopping any knight g5 ideas, although they don't seem to do much. Bishop comes all the way back to f1, so as we talked about, several chances to take on c6, but Carlsen did not fancy it and retreats the bishop back to f1. And yeah, this has all actually been played in a correspondence game, which ended in a draw. In that game, black played knight to e8. But here Kramnik plays rook to a2, which then, according to my database, is a novelty. Carlsen plays bishop b2, blocking here, queen to e8. Knight comes into c4. And black plays b5. So you could trap the rook, like play knight a3, something like this. But it turns out it's not so easy to actually attack this rook with something that's of lesser value. So Carlsen doesn't bother with this and just plays knight to e3, keeping the knight centralized. Knight e7. This knight is eyeing some squares here, so Kramnik counters. And now rook to a1. So Carlsen doesn't mind a trade here. We have rook d to a8, and the rooks come off. Rook to a1, and Carlsen is heading towards the endgame. Queen a8, contesting the a file immediately. Bishop to b2, and of course it was a double attack on the bishop on a1 and the pawn on e4. However, black has lost control over the b5 square, so we're going to have a trade-off here. And a trade of queens. Queen takes e4, knight takes e4, and bishop takes b5. So not much going on here other than white has a 2-to-1 pawn majority here on the queen side, which looks like it could be slightly more dangerous than the 4 against 3 on the king side, which is unlikely to amount to much. But nonetheless, Kramnik starts to push his majority on the king side, which is very logical. F5. Bishop comes back to d3, and if allowed, we will take on a4, e4. So the knight retreats, and now bishop f1. So Carlsen wants to push the knight back before going all the way back to f1, g5, and now knight c4. So Carlsen is attacking this pawn, and if allowed, let's say a move like e4, getting the pawn out of the way, we can take on d6, c takes, and knight somewhere, let's say knight d4, and now all of a sudden we have, well, a dangerous pass pawn, and we do have the bishop pair. So here white can definitely, we can also open up for our dark squared bishop, so black would have to be really careful here. So Kramnik does not want to allow this, so he gives up the other bishop. Bishop takes on c4. Bishop takes with check, king g7, knight d2, and now okay with his bishop at the moment, slightly cramped by his own pawns. He starts to move them onto light squares. The Capablanca rule: put the pawns on the opposite color of your bishop. That's what he does. e4, bishop b3, opening up the c4 square, and now c6. So pawns on light squares, and now they atone much better with this bishop. We have h3 and h5. Fairly insignificant moves, but okay, Carlsen is getting ready to chop off if something comes to g4. King f1. Kramnik brings his king forward. Knight c4 hitting the bishop. And here Carlsen starts to attack the pawn on c6, which is sort of the only weakness that he can target, and he does so with knight to a5. And knight d7 here by Kramnik. And note that if you were to take on a5, he would give me a very dangerous and outside pass pawn. These pawns are the mortal enemy of the knight, and the knights would struggle to contain this pawn. And of course white does have the bishop pair, which can attack any square in the path of the pawn and ensure its promotion. So black does not want to take there. Instead he plays knight d7, but this allows a double attack here on the pawn on c6. And once again, you don't want to take on a5. So this looks like it might force that, because if you play knight e5 or knight b8, let's just try knight e5. And it seems to me I can play c4, and now I'm threatening to take here and then take this pawn. So you have to be careful. Same with knight b8. I could probably play c4 and think about stuff like this, simply attacking this guy and then going for this pawn. But Kramnik actually found a very nice idea. He gave up the pawn here. He played knight to b6. Now this attacks the bishop, so the bishop has to take on c6, which it does. We have captures, and knight to c4. And this is a very useful pattern, a knight on c4. Now the bishop has to move, and this knight is, especially with a pawn here, because this is just an extra pawn that makes this bishop really, really bad. And another one here. So the bishop can't move. The knight is dominating these squares, so the bishop can't move here. At the moment, it can go to e3, so I'm sure you can guess Kramnik's next move. He's of course down a pawn. He can't allow this bishop to be activated, so f4, continuing to dominate the bishop. And White's task, if he wants to win this game, he has to get rid of this knight. And here a move that really surprised me, you know, f3. It looks horrible to allow e3, which wasn't played, by the way. E takes f3 was played, but if e3, then simply the king comes out. And let's say here, I go here. And now I'm getting rid of this knight, even though you have a protected passed pawn. Once you move the knight, be it if you keep it or you trade it off, either way I will start pushing my own pawns, and eventually I can just use this bishop to plug the hole here, the promotion square, and the double connected passed pawn should decide matters. So very yeah, grandmaster level move here, f3, allowing e3, but of course Kramnik was aware of that here, and not g4. Here another moment that did surprise me. It seems most normal to take here, maybe take twice, and okay, hope that you can maybe activate your king, get rid of this guy. Okay, black will take on g4 and have his own passed pawn, but it's not much for white to worry about, and maybe you can get rid of the blockade. But Carlsen goes king g2, which does allow g3. Kramnik, however, doesn't go g3 until now. So again, a protected passed pawn. But how to make progress? Okay, black can always attack this pawn, but we can always protect it with knight d4. But for now, we have knight to b4. Yeah, this knight might be going to a nice square here. I wasn't sure if perhaps it takes too much time to make a maneuver such as this to try to free the bishop. But probably knight d5 was the idea. Yeah, knight d5. Because if we get the knight here, the bishop has to move. Now we can maybe push the b pawn, and then at a good moment actually sacrifice on f4 and promote the b pawn. So that's probably why Kramnik goes knight to e3 here, which more or less forces Carlsen to take, which he does. Knight d3, e2, so barely stopping the promotion, but white has to be careful now, because black is ready to play bishop to a5, and we can't push our pawns. Then he can maybe just take, make a queen. So could be a zugzwang for white here. He has to be careful. So he plays f4, a nice move. After bishop takes, he activates his king. First he plays b6, and now he activates the king, king to f3. So now he's starting to take on e2, but Kramnik decides to give up the g pawn instead. King takes g2, and now Kramnik activates his king, attacking the pawn, the knight on d3, which goes to e1, and king e3. So now the king is in time to protect this pawn, and yeah, for white it's almost, yeah, it's basically impossible to win now. He played b7. This does lose some flexibility. I mean, you would, in a perfect world, you would like to push the pawn like this and have it protected by the other one, but you don't have time for it. b7 to yeah, lock down the bishop, but then simply h4, and after c4, bishop g3, attacks the knight, c5, king d2. Well, actually, of course, black can't take here because of queening, so the bishop wasn't really attacking the knight. But knight f3, king d1, c6, and king c1. So black will simply jog with the king back and forth here, and white can't make any progress with these pawns because this bishop very nicely covers them both. So yeah, positional draw, nothing to be done. And the yeah, 21st draw in a row by Carlsen, which I think breaks well the streak that that Giri previously had. So wouldn't surprise me if we saw a tweet from Giri mentioning that he broke his drawing record. So yeah, this means that Nepo still is leading, and well, Carlsen has some work to do, and yeah, we'll have to wait and see what he does. If you haven't, I wouldn't. It wouldn't hurt my feelings if you would subscribe here, and if you're in the mood for more chess, we have another video over there. But until then, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.